You're watching Tri Vibes TV. Welcome to another weekly training video where I'm here to talk through all the training I'm doing to prepare for Ironman Texas, coming up in about 17 weeks, April of 2026. In today's video, I'll take a look at how last week's training went. We'll take a quick look at the training I have in my plan coming up this week, and then we'll finish off talking about how some of the Garmin health and performance metrics have been developing over the past couple of weeks, and that'll be about it. Kind of short and sweet today. Before I dive into last week's training, I want to say I think the biggest takeaway from this week is that I feel like I'm more prepared this far out from the race than I was the last two times I trained for an Ironman. And that's a pretty good feeling to have. I just feel sort of mentally stronger, physically stronger than where I was 17 weeks out from Ironman Texas last year. And even though 2022 is kind of a long time ago, I feel very confident that I'm in a better place mentally, physically for the race than I was back in the summer of 2022. I think mostly before my first Ironman, I kind of felt like a deer in the headlights and just kind of trusted that I was going to be able to finish, but I couldn't visualize the day, and it was a little bit of more of a situation where I felt like I didn't have a lot of control. Like I just felt like I needed to see what was going to happen in my first Ironman race. So definitely glad that I'm not there anymore. And I definitely am glad that I am feeling, overall stronger mentally, physically than I was last year at this point. So I think that's a big takeaway. And then the other thing I want to mention is that I've started to really feel some of the fatigue from the longer training sessions on the weekend showing up in my sort of just feeling off and feeling tired, a little emotionally drained. And that is something that I'm trying to really keep an eye on, because I don't want to spend the next 17 weekends feeling just totally wrecked and not able to handle dealing with family and things like that. And that's definitely not what happened this last weekend. I really feel like I felt the impact of the longer training sessions and a little bit more than I have been. So just something to note as well. Diving into the day by day from last week, let's take a look here at Monday. Last week, short swim in the morning. Very easy run afterwards. I really tried to take that run as easy as possible. Averaged 134 heart rate in about 10 minutes per mile, and then had a yoga session later in the day. On Tuesday, I got thrown off a little bit. I cannot remember the last time I skipped a bike run workout on my training plan, but the day on Tuesday really called for it. I needed to be up at a mechanic shop about an hour away early in the morning, and I knew I really only had time for one session in the day, and I chose to prioritize my strength training. I went and did that before heading out on my adventure for the day. And it's funny because I really think that was the right choice, but it felt so strange to skip this workout. It's just not really like me. If I have a bike run on my plan, I'm usually there to do it. So on Wednesday, got out and did the first speed work session I've done in weeks. And fortunately, it was very easy, not easy, but it wasn't a very demanding pace, and it wasn't a lot of volume of time, really. So 2 by 6 minutes at marathon effort, which is really 10 to 15 seconds faster than sort of my easy pace range. For me, I was shooting for somewhere around 7:15 per mile. The first one felt pretty good. I came in right around 7:19 per mile. The second one, 7:17 per mile. I'm really glad that they were just 6-minute chunks. I was able to feel in control the whole time. Not sure how it would have gone if I had to run much longer, or if I had to do 4 by 6 minutes or something like that. But that being said, I think that went well, almost 6 miles on Wednesday. Thursday was a huge training day. I started the day with a strength session in the morning, got to my bike ride and realized it was calling for an hour and 40 minutes instead of the usual hour. So I didn't have time for an hour 40, but I crammed in 90 minutes of zone 2 effort on the bike. And then I went to a Pilates tower class right afterwards. So strength session, shower, 90-minute bike, shower, Pilates class, and then it was 1 o'clock when I was done, and I was feeling pretty fried. Definitely feeling like it was a big training day. You'll notice I have a swim here. I actually just moved that swim to the next morning. So on Friday, I went to the pool, took it easy the rest of the day. Saturday, I had another 10-mile run. And this was exciting because I had just done a 10-mile run last week. And let's see, I was 8:05 per mile at 151 heart rate last week. And then 8:08 at 149. So 2 BPM lower heart rate, very similar paces for 10 miles. And that's considering it was actually a lot warmer on Saturday morning as well. So I felt like that run just, I didn't really feel like I don't know how to say this, but the weekend before running 10 miles, I was like really pumped to do it. It was my first long run in a while. This run, I was more in the mindset of this is routine. I shouldn't feel intimidated by 10 miles. I just did 10 miles last week. Let's just see what happens. And, I ultimately ended up having a little bit of discomfort on my left side, like my left hamstring and glute were bothering me. My hip felt good. And ultimately that run went well, but the rest of the day on Saturday, I just felt, and I touched on this earlier, I just felt drained. Like my foot was kind of flaring up and hurting a little bit. Getting up, sitting down, just felt uncomfortable. I ended up at Costco walking around, and I just felt like, oof, like I basically want to figure out how to be able to feel better later in the day after doing a long run like this, because I don't want to spend the next 17 weeks feeling like I'm beat up every weekend. So we'll see. I am optimistic that there might be something I could do to try and get ahead of this, whether it's, a nutrition thing or just a expectation thing of my own, what am I expecting to be able to do after my long training sessions. But I'm confident that I'll find a balance. And speaking of long training sessions, that's a good segue into, well, the longest training session of the week, which was yesterday. Called for 4 hours of zone 2 effort. I ended up doing it here on the trainer. Ended up riding just about 3 hours and 40 minutes. So I wanted to try to be kind to myself, and I didn't want to force myself to do exactly 4 hours of ride time, because I felt like, in the end, getting out and starting that ride at 6:30 in the morning and calling it at 10:30, that's still 4 hours of time, even if I'm taking a little bit of time to get off, use the restroom, refill my water bottles. If I were riding that 4 hour ride on the road and I was working off of just elapsed time, I think there would be a lot of stopping, right? You'd be stopping for stoplights and, coasting a few times and, yielding for traffic and all these little breaks that you get. That really adds up. And I really feel like I didn't cheat myself at all by, just starting at 6:30 in the morning and finishing at 10:30 and just doing my best. To ride as much as possible. That being said, I was very, very cautious about this ride. I approached it from a let's ease into it point of view. I didn't like the idea of shooting for like a mid to high range zone 2 average and just trying to hang on the whole time. Instead, I used the companion app to drive ERG mode on the trainer. I never really had the target set at more than 195 watts. I kind of hovered around 185, 195, which is the low end of my zone 2. Averaging about 186 watts, which is low zone 2, and averaging 141 BPM on the heart rate, which is actually like zone 1. So I think my theory about this ride is that I don't think I had enough calorie intake and carbohydrate intake. I think that, and it was very clear, I was doing this ride live on YouTube, and I looking at the video, like I am kind of suffering a lot more than I feel like I should be for a zone 2 ride. Like I got it done, but I was not on top of it. I was sort of suffering that last 2 hours. Suffering might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I just know that I have felt better on bike rides that are that long in the past. And my theory is that I need to try to get some of the nutrition that I've been using in the prior years, specifically this e-fuel product from Crank Sports. I think that that's going to be a better route for me to go. Some of the other products I tried on Sunday Ride, this Sunday's ride have a little bit more sugar than I'm used to. And I think that just sort of led to some discomfort. And ultimately, I just think I can do better on nutrition. So optimistic that the next time I do like a 4+ hour ride on my indoor trainer, I'm going to be taking in more calories and I'm going to be on top of it, hopefully, even in that last hour, 2 hours of the effort. So that being said, I was able to run off my bike yesterday. Took it pretty easy. I didn't really want to push it too much. The first few steps, I could actually feel that sort of hamstring glute discomfort that had set in during Saturday's run. I felt it right off the bat. However, it did calm down pretty nicely after the first mile. I was able to run the last 2 miles feeling ultimately pretty good. And you know, that's actually where I was getting my thought that I mentioned earlier about feeling like I'm stronger than I have been in the past at this point, because you know, I'm running these 9-minute miles after this, 4-hour effort on the bike. And, I felt pretty good. Like, I didn't feel great, but my body was sort of like here for it. I didn't have alarm bells and my muscles screaming at me to stop. I was just sort of like, hey, like, I kind of felt better as I went. And that all being said, definitely a difficult training weekend. And I'm not 100% sure, but it might be such that sort of the previous big weekends are kind of stacking up on me a little bit. But we'll see. This is Ironman training, and I am here for it. So, that being said, again, I'm dropping that phrase a lot today. Quick look at the training coming up this week. It's a holiday week. I might end up adjusting this quite a bit to accommodate for family visiting and things like that. So tomorrow I've got a bike run workout and I'm going to do my strength training in the morning. On Wednesday I have a speed run with 8-minute efforts instead of 6-minute efforts. I think that's a great step up. Go from 6 to 8 minutes. I feel excited to go and do that. I don't feel intimidated. I think that's like perfect. Thursday, Christmas Day, 1 hour, 40-minute easy zone 2 bike. I'm not 100% sure I can commit to that one. That's Christmas morning, and we'll figure that out. Got a swim on Friday. Let's look at the long stuff. On Saturday, 8-mile run, easy pace. That sounds great. Sunday, 4-hour, 30-minute zone 2 ride, 2-mile run. I am not 100% sure that's going to be the plan for this weekend because I have some family visiting. However, I'll talk about it with my coach and I'll figure it out. I'll give you an update next week when I'm here to talk about it all post tense. Last thing I wanted to touch on today was just the Garmin stuff because it's been fun to track this. I like this page here in Garmin Connect. I am still in the maintaining zone of training status right now, steady maintaining since December 12th. It looks like my HRV or my VO2 max rather for cycling and running has dipped down in the last week or so, but these are kind of tricky to track. I don't pay too much attention to these. One thing I am really happy about right now is that my HRV status is starting to climb back in the right direction. I can't tell you how it was really distressing. I did not enjoy getting these low HRV scores and seeing strained training status. If you look back here, I had this strained training status lining up with this low HRV. So I've really been focusing on sleep, and to see this line going up in that direction definitely makes me feel like what I'm doing with my recovery and sleep is making a difference. Final note here on this page is the acute training load. I can't help but feel like skipping that one bike run workout on last Tuesday has made the trend of this line look like it's trending down instead of up. And I totally understand that your training load should ebb and flow over time. It's just interesting seeing, on Tuesday when I decided to not do that bike run, I was like, what's a big deal? It's not going to be a big deal. But here I am like a week later looking at my chronic training load and realizing that it decreased for the first time. And it's probably because I didn't do that bike run workout on Tuesday and blah, 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 blah. Oh boy, all this stuff is so much fun to think about. But overall, like I said in the beginning of this video, I think I'm in a good place. I'm feeling good. Hoping I can feel a little bit better on some of these days where I have longer training sessions, but other than that, I'm still locked in, still committed. I will be here next Monday to talk about how this week's training went. And as usual, if you have anything to add, any questions, comments about these video updates that I'm doing here on Mondays, please go ahead and drop it in the comments. I will absolutely read it and get back to you. That's it for today. Take care, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.